Thank you for joining me for another Sutherland report. I'm in a completely different, undisclosed location. And before I bring on my wonderful guests for a revisit about an extremely important subject, I just want to give a big plug to another very, very important subject. So, you are fully aware that I have the privilege to be involved in this project. So, the American Gulag Chronicles, the art of confinement. Go on, please find it, the American Gulag Chronicles.org, and the art of confinement. There's a new book. There's a second book that's come out. Please go on there, buy the book, buy the second book, buy both books, buy loads of books, as those books, the money raised is to support the people that have been arrested, thrown in the American gulags for being there on January the 6th, taking their constitutional rights to their own house. At a Epoch Times report in the last 24 hours, 1,383 people have been arrested, and they are ramping that up. So thank you. Please go on there. So without further ado, I'm just going to bring on Dottie, and we are going to continue our conversation about child trafficking, and we are going to focus on a book that she has wonderfully got that we will talk about, and also we will then talk about what is happening on the Texas border and hear what she's doing and get any updates. So thank you. Dottie, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being so patient while I do a few important adverts. Thank you for joining me from your select studio or being on the road in your car. I know how that feels. That's brilliant. How are you?
I'm just fine. I love my car and it makes a great place to have a sound room. So
No, I hear that. Are you able to tell us where you are, or is that I've just given the game away?
I live in the San Antonio area of Texas. So um that's I live in a little suburb outside of San Antonio.
Hmm. Okay. So what's the report on the ground? What are you noticing in the fact that I suppose it's hard not to see that 8 million illegals, I think I understand, have come over into via the Mexican border there, via into Texas. What are your observations at the moment? The last time I talked to you, you were on your way to stop to have a conversation with me, and that there were many trucks going down to the Texas border to make a point about the illegal immigration that's coming over the border. What are your thoughts?
Well, I can just relay a few things that I've seen. I'm about 90 miles from the border, so certain areas are affected more than mine. Um, there's a lot of people where I live, so it's, I guess, the more densely populated the area, the less you notice. But what I did notice that I thought was kind of stood out is there was a wreck on I-10 major freeway in San Antonio, and I was driving with my daughter, and so the traffic was stopping for the wreck, and the freeway, which is a major freeway, was closed due to what appeared to be an accident. And while we're sitting there and nobody can move, a whole line of buses passes us with police escort. And I don't know why they were in this location, but the location I was sitting on the freeway was near an Air Force base, and the direction they were going was towards the airport. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I just kind of noticed all these buses. I mean, it was maybe 8 or 10 buses escorted with police, that while all the other people were sitting on the freeway unable to move, they went down the shoulder and were taken past the wreck and on to wherever they were going. And it felt to me like it was moving people. Obviously, those are people in the buses, and it felt to me like it's likely part of the immigrant, whatever you want to call it, the influx of people into our country. And so, well, I can't prove it. I can just say that's what it felt like. And I thought, I just was trying to remember in my 60 years of being on this earth, I don't remember an accident that stops a major freeway, but then allows buses to go right past it. So I don't know what that meant, but it's something I'd never seen before.
Dottie, who is the mayor of San Antonio?
Mm, that
Is
is,
I,
that's a good question. Nuremberg, Mayor
ah
Nuremberg.
right. Well, let's
And,
discuss him. Let's discuss
you know,
him.
we can a bit. I don't know. So let me tell you why I don't know much. I knew everything about San Antonio politics. I led a nonprofit there that searched for missing children, maybe 8 years ago. And what I found there was just painful, absolutely painful on every level. But the last straw was that the district attorney that was in office was primaried, meaning he should have been the Democrat nominee for district attorney because he was already the elected DA. Well, a few weeks before the primary, right just shy of $1 million came in from a Soros funded group that pitted DA into that position. And I helped try to stop that, but I was unsuccessful. And that district attorney, the reason this is so profound, so take a moment, listen to me now, because I don't want anyone to miss this. That district attorney's entire criminal defense practice, so prior to becoming DA, he was a criminal defense attorney. Fine, we need good ones. I want people to be fairly tried. However, he only represented pedophiles and sex traffickers. So now the criminal defense attorney that only represents pedophiles and sex traffickers is the district attorney in the county that San Antonio sits in. And so after he was elected and put into office, I said, I won't even drive through that county anymore, that city. I don't take my money there. I don't take myself there. It's the little bit I can do to disagree with this. And it's kind of survival on my side because I can't look away. I can't stop seeing this. I can't say it's okay. It's like a message to the world, come here if you're a pedophile. And years later, a case that I worked on came to court. And the district attorney that was elected had to recuse himself because he, in fact, had been the men who sex trafficked children, he was their attorney. And they wound up, even though he recused himself, they admitted, they took a guilty plea where they pleaded no contest and they did not go to jail. They were facing proof and sentences worth many, many years in jail, but they got to just walk away. Now, I know you can say, well, they're on probation, but that's not a punishment for selling a child for sex. And I helped that family. I helped that mother. I held her when she cried after that plea bill was accepted, even though she testified begging the judge not to. I held that mother when she's scared for her daughter, who now really can't have any peace, even though she's so injured, she didn't have peace yet, but it's further away now. And that's what I was warning against. It happened.
I think well, my prayer is that everyone has just heard what you've said loud and clear, which bluntly is just the corruption within the system that you have described. Now, I have actually sat in front of Mayor Nuremberg. I sat in front of him at the Parliament of World Religions last summer in Chicago. Now, and the reason is because of this, and the Parliament of World Religions is another subject because it's now going to have a little crossover. Nuremberg was there with 3 other mayors, one, I think 2 from Canada I don't have the details in front of me, so I'm doing this from memory, and another one from America. Nuremberg was talking about, they were all talking about the fact that I suppose this sort of sanctuary city orientation, but he turned around and said that San Antone, our question, we are not there to answer questions and say, you know, we're not there to say, where are your papers? We're there to say, how can we help you? Up until last summer, he had then reported that 200,000 illegal immigrants had been helped just by San Antone alone coming into that area. Now, what you have just said in regard to the buses, that kind of thing, that doesn't surprise me, not because I'm this expert on it from the outside in the UK. You are the expert, you are the person on the ground in what you do, but that doesn't surprise me. So San Antone, then, if we think it, you can describe this. So if 200,000 illegal immigrants have been helped, have come into San Antone, what strain does that put on the public services, the roads, the water, except the housing? Could you describe to me what kind of strain that puts on just in that area alone?
Well, I can just relate my experiences. And when I had that nonprofit many years ago, 8 years ago, I worked with an insurance agent to try to figure out why can I not raise any money to help find missing children. You'd think I would be. Our nonprofit was like 40 years old, and the child it was named after was beloved by the nation and the community. And I'm like, why do I have so much trouble raising, literally dozens of dollars is what I would raise, not hundreds, not thousands, dozens. And so the insurance agent said, well, the average income at that time, average across the city, was 20,000 a year. And I was like, oh my gosh, I must be doing really well to raise any money out of a community that's basically 20,000 a year. Now there are people that make more, there's the military, but across the board at that time, that's what he was telling me. And he would know because he sets the rates to sell the insurance. And so that's what he told me. And I'm no expert in demographics or money, but I do know if you're pulling from people trying to exist on that small amount of money, there's not much to work with. And our nonprofit doesn't exist anymore. I realized I was banging my head against a wall to try to function. On the flip side of that, the taxes were incredibly high. They say they're not high, but they are. And so I don't know what that means to taxes. I guess we haven't seen it yet, but I don't live there. So, on purpose, I don't live in that county. I know just the trafficking victims. I had two that had horrific hospital bills. One was in that county. Her medical bills were $1 million, and she had insurance through her parents. But there's still cost all the way around. Just one victim, just her physical body, not the emotional damage, which takes much more time and effort to heal than the physical body. But her physical body took $1 million in medical bills to keep her alive.
Wow.
So I don't know what the cost is, but I'm sure that I don't have the brain to count the number of zeros that it is.
Well,
because they're not having an easy
oh,
ride over here. I mean, the migrants that are coming, they're not having just it's a brutal, brutal journey for many. I don't know if all of them, but many suffer that kind of physical and emotional damage.
well, if we go back to Mayor Nuremberg, so there he is saying our role is to not ask for papers, questions, but to ask how we can help. And it was a public discussion, as I say, at the Parliament of World Religions, and I don't think that many Americans even know that that exists, let alone that those kind of conversations are going on. May I suggest that your Attorney General, Ken Paxton, needs to go down to San Antone and actually have a word with with Mayor Nuremberg personally. I think the discussion would be rather interesting.
I bet it would. I bet it would. Um, that discussion between cities and the federal statutes on immigration is one that's been going on a long time. I have never interacted with Mayor Nuremberg, but I built the Human Trafficking Task Force in Houston in 2005. And that discussion was really heated in my efforts to build the Human Trafficking Task Force. Such so that I remember one scene where a federal prosecutor was in an elevator with the chief of police, and little me at 5 foot tall was holding these giant men apart because they were arguing so forcefully. The city saying, look, we're here to enforce city laws, we're not here to enforce federal laws. And the U.S. attorney saying, you're a sanctuary city, how dare you? And the chief saying, we are not a sanctuary city, blah, blah, blah. So this is a very heated and ongoing discussion, no matter the year, no matter the city. It's something we do need to answer.
Could you unpack that a bit in regard to 2005? Because it was Houston then a sanctuary city, or was it not? One person's saying it's not, the other one's saying it is.
Correct. So the prosecutor, being a federal prosecutor, felt that it was because police weren't detaining illegal people here without proof. And that's what's hard about this. Let me do it in layers. So the first thing is the argument. City police, there were 5,800 Houston police officers at that time answering every call you can imagine in a city of, I don't know the right number, but more than 4 million people. Maybe it was 5. I don't remember at that time, but it's a, fourth largest city. Sometimes it's the fourth largest city in the U.S. The numbers change. So you can imagine, if you look at it from the city police standpoint, they're doing their job in the city. That's all they want to do. They don't want to do anybody else's job because they are literally overrun. And they are, to be honest. There's a lot of crime that occurs in a city of that size. From my perspective, I wanted them to do trafficking. And from their perspective, they saw it as a nightmare because those cases don't end quick, neat, and fast. They can go on years, and they don't have that time. So that's their perspective. The U.S. attorney's perspective, the federal prosecutor, he wants all federal laws to be prosecuted. The only way he can do that is if someone arrests somebody and refers them for prosecution. The U.S. attorney can't go out and arrest anybody. He can only try the case. So you can see where each party has a very complex part of this discussion and this job. Me being in the middle, I was forming together the groups of people I needed to get the task force functioning. I needed city police, but they were terrified of me, literally, because I represented a whole bunch of ongoing cases that might never end. And managing that type of crime in a city, that's not what they want. They want to pull up on a scene, figure out who needs to go to jail or not, and then move on to the next call because they've got so many coming in. So that was my struggle. How do I put these parts together where they can work? And so the U.S. attorney's struggle was, how can I prosecute federal crimes if you won't even try to arrest for a crime to get me started? So in between that comes the FBI and ICE, Federal Bureau of Investigation and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They're supposed to investigate the federal crimes. Well, they don't normally just trip across a crime in progress like a patrol guy would do. So Houston Police Department has people patrolling that see what's going on in the neighborhood. So you can see how all those parts can fit together or they can break apart. I'm very proud at that time that I was able to help them, along with some great people that were willing to fit together and work. But it was not easy. And that elevator scene happened more than once in different rooms where people were heatedly arguing their position. Their positions weren't wrong. They were just in positions that were hard to solve the problem. And I don't want to delete the argument now. That argument has multiplied times 10,000, I'm sure, since then. and I haven't heard a solution yet. Um, when you look at the rules that each department has, it's very punitive to any law enforcement organization if they do something wrong. You know, you or I might go, oh, sorry, I won't do it again. In police world, people get punished,
Mm,
fired,
mm, mm.
worse, you know. So you have to understand that their role is already defined and they have to stay in their lane, as the terminology we use between us, you know, stay in your lane. However, in trafficking, there wasn't a lane, and it was so ridiculous. Police were referring cases to me when I worked for a nonprofit, like I was going to do their job for them. And, you know, that's how I became a private investigator and things like that, that I had to do it. No one, you know, I was getting all these referrals and no way to act. So I used the role of private investigator. I also um, was helping a lot of children that were here without parents. So they were easy to traffic a child with no adult around. And so for 6 years, I practiced immigration law. There's a special way I was able to do that without being an attorney. And so, you know, I really got to understand how wonderful the legal system is and how burdensome it is from all sides. So go back to that elevator discussion now. You can see how the police have to be careful what they do. The prosecutor wants more of everybody, but he has, you know, he can't just make my world better either. Once I started bringing him cases, he got worried, you know, scared of me. Not scared, but you know what I mean. I'm just saying it quickly. He was like,
Mm,
oh no, it's
mm.
her. Let me go the other way. Oh no. Because she's got a messy case that no one's ever tried before. And what do we do about it? And so I would love to see, I do love seeing more discussion on this, even heated discussions and more thought. Because back in 2005, I felt like the only people having this discussion were maybe, you know, 10% of the population or less. And now I hear this discussion every place I look and turn. So I want it solved. I want people to stop being hurt and trafficked, which means enslaved. It's not smuggling, it's enslavement. Smuggling is a different crime. I want to see children safe no matter where they are in the world. I'm so tired of seeing a world that is hostile to children and parents. We should be protecting parents and children, and we don't. And and I'm talking about good parents. I'm not talking parents that sell their kids. Sadly, I've met those too. I will not protect them, but I sure will protect their kids. So I don't know the solution, but I know I saw. The other thing lately I've heard, I've not witnessed, but I've heard government contractors, big names you would recognize, are moving children. I'm like, what is that about? Back when I was practicing law for unaccompanied minors, you couldn't get money except to house them. And now all of a sudden, government contractors are moving them. I'm sure they're not working on anything that an unaccompanied child or their family could afford. They're operating on government funds, obviously. And I don't understand that. I would like to know what that is.
Well, going back to what you were saying about your bus, the buses that you witnessed. So these buses are coming down the freeway, going on the, you know, the hard shoulder, as we would call it. They're coming down there. That's all then paid by your taxes. There, it's just come out within the last week, I think, that the Biden administration flew in 300,000 illegal immigrants from South American countries into America. So he's saying that they were processed outside the country and then flown in. We know because of people like Michael Yon and Anne Vandersteel, who've done a lot of reporting on the border. We know that Mayorkas and the Homeland Dudar, the gentleman whose voice is always at the airport going about security and being a highly annoying voice, as far as I'm concerned, having heard it far too many times. They then have got these setups, these camps, then to process people before they even come into America. this has been reported on. So you have talked about your experience of trying to join up different departments within in 2005, and then you've just said about the government giving out contracts to then traffic children that are not parented. Dottie, this sounds a really, really stupid question, and I really do apologize for it. Where are these children ending up? Where are they ending up? Are they ending up as slaves in people's houses? Are they adopted? Where are they ending up?
Well, I certainly have served unaccompanied minors that wound up in places like that. And the New York Times reporter Hannah Dreier, Drier, wrote a recent article about the process of the unaccompanied minors and how they wound up working in slaughterhouses and other um, labor places that she called labor trafficking. So you can Google that story, it'll come right up, and you can see where she found that they were. And in my experience, for me, I'm helping someone that referred a trafficking victim to me. So, of course, I see them. But she was just out asking what happened to the children after the Office of Refugee Resettlement, places them. And that's what she found.
So all of this movement going on across the border, we've then got a mayor in San Antonio who's saying, how can we help? Instead of actually addressing the issue and thinking this is illegal, this is wrong. So in the end, I then asked the mayor, or I would like to ask the mayor and say, even though I sat in front of him, didn't have that opportunity to ask a question, but do they have any allegiance to actual security of the nation that he resides in?
Well, let me comment just a little bit laterally to that question, because like I said, I don't have any experience with him. I avoid San Antonio. I don't pay mind to it now because they lost me when they elected the DA that protects pedophiles and sex traffickers. I just can't do it. My being can't support it in any. I can't put one toe in there to even support it, even silently. So anyhow, I just would love to direct your audience. I assume it's as easily available wherever they are as it is to me to YouTube. And yesterday, I think it was put out maybe 2 days ago, around March 13th or 14th. Sheriff, um, again, listen, hear this. Stop what you're thinking about. Listen to me here. Polk County, Florida Sheriff. So Polk County, Florida Sheriff Grady Judd, Judd, did a YouTube video about a trafficking arrest he just coordinated with and rescued some victims. The victims he quotes are from Venezuela, and they have a card that was given to them that allows them to fly anywhere in the U.S. And his allegation is they were being sex trafficked across the U.S. using this card to fly around for free. And it's a government. I believe, I don't want to be wrong, but it sounds like it's one of those cards issued with what they're saying, we help them. We help the immigrants when they get here. So I don't know if it's government funded, nonprofit funded, or who's funded, but it's a card that lets them get on the plane multiple times and fly all over the U.S. So don't believe me, go to YouTube, Sheriff Grady Judd, a few days ago, somewhere around the week of the 14th, and you'll see him reporting what they found. So
Wow.
think about, so according to him, the trafficker, which was a woman, was expecting $3,000 from this victim. She was going to meet them at the airport and collect their money. Well, they're not going to be there. And I believe the police will be looking for her, and they're looking to pick her up. However, just imagine, she's not the only one. Whenever somebody's figured a scheme out, there's usually scores of people doing it, not one. How many times is that happening, and how few victims are being identified? They're running all over the country, being sold for sex, maybe labor too, but in his case it was sex that he's quoting. I mean, that is lucrative. That $3,000 is probably for a very short time period, and there's multiple victims. So what's that costing our society, much less our tax money? Those are husbands, fathers, whoever's paying that money in. That trafficker's getting that money, getting more victims. They're not going to go, oh, well, 3,000 is enough, let me stop there. No, they're going to get more and more and more and more. Of course there's a flood on our border. Criminal people are benefiting hugely from all this undocumented people appearing that no one knows where they are, people in a system that's not marking them and tracking that they are who they say they are. I don't want to sound like everyone should be tracked, but I think people coming in, they're invisible here now. If you look at it from the victim point of view, nobody knows where those women are or were. Nobody knows how to find them. They don't know anyone to reach out for help. They had to get police interaction to escape, and even that's going to have consequences. I'm sure their family members or somebody are going to suffer because they don't show up with that money. So even the victims aren't really free. If they can get away from the people helping them, they will go back, not because they want to, because if they don't, it may be their sister or mother or other loved one put in their place. So why do we sit here and just let it happen? That's what I can never understand.
Well,
Every person in the world should stop this.
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? That's the question that you've been constantly asking yourself for years. And I'll ask that question: why aren't people stopping it? Because again, coming not because I'm picking on the mayor Nuremberg, but I sat in front of him and heard various things from his lips. He has to be aware of the chaos that it's causing to the state of Texas and the drain on resources, and then going on to the rest of the country. Does he actually believe in borders and all this kind of thing? And as you have laid out, if people are being charged $3,000 per person, and how many people are coming over the border, how much money are these people making? And you've said it, this is extremely lucrative. And why is this not being stopped?
And I commend you for taking that effort to ask an elected official, what are you doing? Why are you making these decisions? Do you know the consequences? Chances are a few people do know. But that $3,000 I'm talking about, that's like per day. They're not, it's not to get here. It's once they're here, then they're sold over and 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 over on an unlimited, infinite basis. And they're sold for, I mean, if you buy sex, it's rape. Come on. If you weren't having to pay for it, they wouldn't be having sex with you. So it's $3,000 worth of rape every 24, 48, whatever hour period. And we're just sitting by going, oh, well, you know, there's a problem. Okay. I mean, it's brutal. I guess not everyone's looked into their eyes once they're rescued. Not everyone's held them while they cry. Not everyone's heard their mom terrified of where they are and they can't find them. But this is terror going on every day, every moment for so many people. And when those beautiful souls are in a country where no one knows where they are, where someone can disappear them, move them around, take their all of their human rights, not just a couple of their human rights, but all of them, and nobody knows they exist, of course bad guys are going to profit. That's what they need. They have to have that. They have to have someone with no social tie whatsoever. So it makes sense if you look at it from a criminal perspective.
Well, I couldn't ask the mayor of Nuremberg when I sat in front of him those questions. However, I suppose nearly a year later, I could actually ask him, and I have the seminar. I may even have the recording, but I was definitely in there, and I can recount things. My point as well is, um, but do American citizens know what is actually that these kind of meetings go on within their own country? That of course they do know, a number of them do, that they've got politicians, as you've just said, about DEA that's financed by Soros and all the rest. Suddenly this money comes in. They are aware of that, but I sometimes think that not enough people are aware of that, where there is this sort of Trojan horse within. There's a fifth column within your own country that's been going on for some time, and then that is now unfolding on a huge scale. I mean, you remember when Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to illegals within California, etc., and saying, right, okay, I do this, I've been told I do this, then everything ends. And of course it didn't end. It's got far worse. um, what, and also the other thing is, being outside in the UK, it takes a little bit of while to understand, of course, state law, federal law, various different agencies and the remit they have. But what could Ken Paxton, the AG of Texas, and after they tried to kick him out, didn't they? And then he won that case and cleared,
He did win that.
because yeah, because they don't seem to like the fact, or they don't, the Biden administration don't lead to like the fact that he stands up to them and that he pushes back, has pushed back constantly. What could Ken Paxton do? And I know he's a busy man, but do in this kind of situation? What could he do?
Well, he doesn't know this, but that plea deal I mentioned with the traffickers that got away, that came out of his office. So he needs to clean that up. We don't let people sell children for sex and walk out. We need to stop that. And everyone deserves a fair trial, but that's not what happened here. They just did the plea deal. There was evidence, and there was several other DAs. Anyhow, it's a long story. There was evidence. I'm careful about when I, say I want
I,
everyone
I,
to have a fair trial. In this
hmm,
case,
I
it wasn't justice. So he needs to look at that. Second, um, on the border issue, I do believe, because the attorney general, he's akin to that prosecutor I described. He can't prosecute. Well, they can do a little bit of criminal crime, but basically he files lawsuits. That's his job, or he defends Texan, from lawsuits. So I think when I heard him speak, he's got several lawsuits going. Seems like he's been successful. I think in his role, um, only because I'm not as knowledgeable about everything that can be done, I do feel like he and his staff are doing their best, except for that person that took that plea deal. I'm not real happy with that guy.
hmm.
Um, but I guess one thing I could ask him if I had a magic wand, I'd say any sex trafficking of children case, it needs to be reviewed by someone, and I think a plea deal should be rare. I don't want them to deal out. I want everything to be public record that happened, with the victims' names, of course, protected. But we don't need to sweep this under the rug. When you sell children for sex, it needs to not be swept under the rug. It needs to not be hushed. It needs to be known everywhere, and more victims need to come. The opportunity. Let me make sure I'm again hear this.
Hmm.
When we sweep this under the rug and they get a plea deal, all the other victims, because trust me, chances are it wasn't just the ones we know about. Do we stifle their voices? I mean, would you come forward and face those guys again if you know nothing's going to happen? Or if you never knew they went to trial and you didn't get a chance to say, hey, that happened to me too, Mr. Prosecutor, I'd like to tell you what happened to me. So I'm really opposed to handing out plea deals when children were sold for sex. Maybe Texas could say, hey, we're not going to do that so easy again. That's what I would ask myself today. On the border issue, um, I don't know all the powers that he has, because the attorney general, the way I understand it, he files lawsuits or defends Texas from lawsuits in the state of Texas. So somebody has to have a reason to sue. On suits, I'm not knowledgeable enough to know if there's any more he could file. But I do appreciate when I hear him come out and speak and explain why he filed. He does a lot of interviews. You should ask him, bring him on. Um, he does a lot of interviews and he explains, in a short version of the complex issues that he's battling. Because a lawsuit, I mean, it could be hundreds of pages, and somehow he's got to portray it, in a very quick manner. So um, I wish I could say exactly, other than what I just did, exactly what I'd like him to do. On my end, we need to not take plea deals for people that sex traffic children. There should not be no. They should get absolutely the maximum. No plea deal on that. Not excusable. I know sometimes plea deals are made to get more information. I don't know how you get more information that's more important than who's selling children for sex.
I
You're
hear
not trading up to some, okay, so this guy robbed a bank and his friend did this. That's a good reason to use a plea deal. When you're selling children for sex, you need to get them all. I'm sorry. And I didn't see any
you.
other big arrests come, so they didn't get them all for that plea deal. They just gave a plea deal, is my humble opinion.
Well, your humble opinion is totally and utterly valid and heard, and you don't have to apologise for that. I think yes, I would be honoured to interview Ken Paxton. I know a little bit about him, hence why I've brought him into this conversation, because it's just understanding the different layers legally and where he can push back. And you've said a very important thing where it goes back to your um, being in Houston in 2005, and if you've then got 5,300 policemen across that city, say of 4 million people, then that is I'll give you an idea. London is has 9 million people, for argument's sake. Now, back in 2010-11, the Metropolitan Police Force was at a sort of figures, I think, between 30 to 32,000 people. Now, if you then work that out maths wise, you've then got 4 million people in Houston with 5,300 police. That immediately says to me that is not enough with some of the things that were going on, not at all. Then I can begin to understand why they're defending their own corner, because they're going, Dottie, if you come in and start raising these cases, you're creating work. Well, we just do not have time to assign people to that work because we've got to be on the streets doing this. Plus, I would have thought there's that whole thing of how it's funding, because people are then looking at their clear up races of cases in regard to whatever cases they're clearing up. So if they decide to clear up the easy case, then they know that funding is going to come. They're being seen as doing good work. We have exactly the same problem over here. Sarcastically, it seems easier for the police to manage and prosecute things for people saying things online than to actually go and visit a home where they've just been burgled. I actually think it would be fantastic if you could sit down with Mr. Paxton and have an interview or have a conversation, because you raise a really important question. You cannot have a plea deal in regard to sex trafficking in children. Otherwise, what kind of deterrent are you giving to other people that want to do that?
Correct. Well, thank you. I'd love to do that. We'll send him an invite. And oh, sorry, I dropped my phone.
No,
Um,
no.
because I think if I can send you the link to the story on that case.
Mm,
Whether I don't know, do you want to just invite him and scare him away with the case, or
mm,
bring it up to him first and say, "Hey, we'd like to invite you"? But there's definitely a talking point there and a comprehension of why. Is there a policy that needs to change, or is this what we want to do? And I think that's a great discussion. And any of your listeners can certainly write or call the Attorney General's office. You can just Google Texas Attorney General. and tell him what you think about that. Should there be a plea deal? Is there a reason why? I don't know. Write him and go, yay. And if not, write him and say, what are you thinking? How dare you? Because he probably doesn't know. And if we don't get a volume of mail, I know the mother and I have, done what we can do to bring attention in every way to it. And if we have a chorus around this, maybe that mom could have some relief of, she feels like she's screaming and nobody hears her. And that hurts a lot. That's,
Mm, mm.
you cannot, until you've had your child missing or trafficked, there's no words I could give you that say how painful that is for the parent. It's a pain that it takes their health, takes their finances, it takes their sanity. They shortens their lifespan. That's how traumatic it is. I
And
worked
blunt,
on
sorry.
another case recently where I just found out the mother died. Um, we did get her kid free. It took a year. Um, and she died of cancer. And I can't think that that's not related. That
Well,
her trauma
um,
led to her health problem.
because it's trauma and it's stress. And what you've said, yeah, is indescribable. Because in many ways, when we're discussing this subject, a lot of people think it's like movie land, don't they? Oh, this only happens in films because it's depicted in films, and you are talking about quite rightly people's lives and what's happened. And the other thing I have to say that if the supposed president of the United States, Biden, and his administration actually cared about this, then they'd actually do something about the border right now. But this is my perspective. There are other reasons why they won't, because I just feel it's a classic Cloward and Piven, which is to completely bust your system or bust your country. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, in my opinion, to go with yours and to second yours, I second it. Um, they know more than I know. They have access to more information than I do.
Hmm.
How they choose to use it, that's up to us to decide. And the United States affects the world.
Hmm.
Every country affects every other country, I believe, but we got a pretty big footprint, good and bad. So all the world needs to chime in on this. Those traffic victims do come from the U.S. They also come from every other country in the world. So why are we allowing, uh, I think, a sucking sound towards the U.S. for trafficking? That needs to stop. We're not just a source country, we're a destination and transit. It used to be when I started, we didn't even think we were a source country, but we are, meaning victims come from here or are domestically trafficked right in their own home. So
Hmm.
trafficking doesn't have to move, and it means enslavement. But we have a system that supports slavery right now. We've had it for a while. I'm not saying it just started, but it certainly is very attractive for many reasons that we discussed in this interview
Hmm.
for traffickers to operate openly and freely. We should never allow that.
Well,
No
you've said it.
child should die for sex. No
No.
child should be sold for sex. No mother should die of cancer because her child was sold for sex. I feel like I'm screaming, hello, wake up,
Hmm.
stop
Hmm.
this.
Hmm. No, I hear. Dottie, before we end this, I mean, I was really touched. And the last time that we had a conversation, a few weeks ago, someone put a message on the little video saying that by listening to you, by listening to T, that they felt really motivated to pray for you both and to pray for what you're doing, which was actually a moving thing to read, which meant that we had spoken into their lives about the situation. So in the last few minutes, how can people support you, support what you do? How can they do that?
Well, thank you for that message, and thank you to the person that sent the message. I do feel the prayers. I can't say I know exactly where they're from, but I do feel the prayers. They do help. In fact, I call it a God moment. I just had a God moment yesterday that I forgot what it was right now. It'd be too long to explain, but it just made me laugh. And I'm like, somebody must be praying. So it was a good one. I keep a little sense of humor, otherwise I'd go nuts. Um,
Hmm.
But anyhow, I have on my website, let me see,
Brilliant. Hmm.
I think you can see it there. This is 55 things parents and grandparents should know. It's on my website, traffickingvictimcentral.com, down there at the bottom. It's a real short little booklet that has let me see if I can open it this way. It has a couple of stories, but most importantly, it has a list of things parents should know. And it's on my website for, it's like $12.99 or so. I can't remember. You get a digital copy from my website. So if you could gift that to a parent or grandparent, I would love that, because one of the examples is, parents don't have anyone to go to tell them, how do I handle this internet thing and my kid? Because their parents didn't have the interactive internet. There was internet, but it was email and websites. This internet can reach out and touch your home in the middle of the night and you don't know it. I have so many parents that put their kids to bed and wake up in the morning and they're gone, or they send them to school and they don't come back. So that's the reason I wrote this little booklet. It's about, a 10-minute read. And what it is an example, like when you see something inappropriate on your kid's phone and you delete it and then take their phone away, that's exactly what bad guy wanted you to do. That deleted thing that the message you didn't like, when she goes missing, I can't figure out who sent her that message now because the parent deleted it.
Right.
Secondly, when they take the phone away and they go, oh no, my kid's not online, he or she, well, yes, they are. They don't need their device. All they have to do is log in anywhere. Or what's more scary, and happens the most, is that the bad guy will wait for you to take the phone away, then he'll give the victim a phone, and then you don't know that phone exists, and now he or she, bad guy, can talk to your child, he or she, uninterrupted, unfettered, no trace. They don't have to have a phone that's active. They only need Wi-Fi. So it'll be a dummy device that's just a device that you don't know about, that your kid can talk to bad guy anywhere. So you need to read this list and then you can make more informed parenting decisions.
Dottie, what would be great? What would be great? And I need to go on your work. Can you just remind everyone what your website is again?
Yes, it's trafficking victim rescue central.org.
Right. Okay.
Or if you want to Google Dottie plus human trafficking, I'm pretty sure you can find me and it'll
Okay.
pop right up when you hit my website.
Brilliant. Well, what in the last sort of couple of minutes, here's a suggestion. What would be quite good is to, when we talk again, is for you to have that book. I'll get the details up here, and let's start going through the booklet and
Okay.
giving that advice out, and the practicalities of that. And the other one is that we don't know where this goes, but whoever is listening, if you work in Ken Paxton's office or have access there, then please get in touch, and so we can open up that conversation. Would be great. Dottie, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for reminding us about a simple tip like that in regard to a phone and taking a phone away, and then someone putting another device in their hands and allowing them to have that communication. I mean, all right, as a parent myself, mine are a lot older, but remembering that whole thing of trying to deal with a mobile phone, and the intrusion of that, and how as a parent sometimes you feel just you feel as though you can't do much in this situation because you want to be wary of the inputs that are coming into your children's life. In the last minute, is there anything that you would like to end our amazing discussion on?
Also, I could ask your listeners to visit my Substack, substack.com, traffic report. I think
Right,
it's Dottie Laster's traffic report. Just Google Substack and Dottie. Again, you'll find it. You can sign up for my newsletter where I do little videos and I comment on stories or cases I've just worked on. And so you
brilliant.
can educate yourself a little bit at a time. I'm not trying to like have you drink from a fire hydrant. And so just
No,
over
no.
time, little micro things, you'll go, wow, I know a lot.
Right. Well, I need to find that. Dottie, I just want to thank you for joining me today. I'm just going to play us out. Stay there for a sec so I can thank you. But I'm just going to play us out and just thank everyone for joining us. And then when I repost this, I'll try and make sure that I've got those details in. So we'll work that out. And for everyone, please keep Dottie in your prayers and the work that she's doing. But thank you so much for joining us both today. Dottie, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to play us out. Cheers.